everybody, it's Emily at Arg Schooling, and welcome to part 2 of my journey to reading horror recommended by Sadie Hartman. I am going to be reading haunted house books in the month of October. So I got my hands on Sadie Hartman's 101 Books to Read Before You're Murdered, and she lays out, like, beautifully so many different horror genres and horror books that I had never heard of, or that I had heard of but didn't really know that much about, and it has me excited to explore. So, last month I did apocalypse stories. This month in October I'm going to be doing haunted house books. So, I basically went through her recommendations and made myself a reading list. And will I get to all of them? Not necessarily. Like, maybe I'll get to a bunch, but probably not everything, because there were a lot of things that she recommended that I was like, ooh, I want to read that. So, let's talk about it, shall we? I don't have physical copies of most of these. I am going to the library tomorrow, and we'll see what I can find. But I know they only had a couple. I have some of these as ebooks, some of them as audiobooks. So, let's just chat about it. This was inspired, by the way, because this month for my Art Book Club, we'll be reading How to Sell a Haunted House. So since I was already reading this, and it was already one of her recommendations, I felt like October was the definite perfect time to jump in. So that's why haunted houses this month. But let's talk about the recommendations she gives. So the first up I did buy a copy of, and that is The Grip of It by Jack Jemps. This is a haunted house book. I'm not going to be great at explaining any of these. I'm sorry. The explanations will come later after I've read them. But I've heard that this is a very weird story. And I mean, aren't all haunted house books kind of weird? But I think this one has an interesting, like, storytelling? I'm not sure. It says, touring their prospective suburban home, Julie and James are stopped by a noise, deep and vibrating like throat singing, ancient, husky, and rasping, but underwater. That's just the house settling, the real estate agent assures them with a smile. He is wrong. So, I'm not going to read the rest of the synopsis, because I already read her description of the book, and I've kind of already forgotten it, which is good, because I don't like to know too much going in. And I feel like, especially with horror, the less you know, the better. This is definitely happening, since I did buy a copy. If they have it at the library, I'm not sure if it's going to be in or not, but she recommended The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig, which is an author I've been wanting to read from, because I often see his social media stuff, and I love his social media. He's hilarious. But I haven't read any of his books, so I've been intrigued. So The Book of Accidents I know absolutely nothing about, besides that it is a haunted house story, and it has like a lot of like emotionally resonant writing. Like you're gonna feel for the characters a lot. I think it's more of an emotional story than a scary story. I don't really know. But I am intrigued. So if they have that at the library, I'm going to try to grab it. Then, let's see. I also really wanted to try to get Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey, because that's another author I've never read from. And this book just speaks to me. The cover. I don't know. Something about this cover does it for me, which is weird because I don't like pink. But there we go. But this one is one that I've heard a lot of people either hate it or love it. So it's very, like, polarizing. So that makes me want to read it even more, because I want to know where I fall on that spectrum. So I'm hoping they have that at the library. I do, though, think that I have the audio. So even if I don't find it at the library, I might still try to listen to it. Then I have Kill Creek by Scott Thomas on my Kindle. And this one is like a haunted house, but also it's about writers. I think there's like writers on a writing retreat or something, and they've all come together, and weird things start to happen in this house. So it's all I really know, but I've had this on my Kindle for like years, like maybe 3 or 4 years, and I've never gotten to it, and I've always meant to. So I'm really hoping to make that happen this month. And then I have The Switch House by Tim Meyer, which really intrigues me because, one, it's short. I think this is a novella. And two, this is like a reality series kind of a deal where, like, this couple goes on a reality show, and when they come back, like their house is, something has happened after this person has been living in their house. So like that premise just really intrigues me a lot. And I have the audio and the ebook for this one, and it's short, so I think I'll get through it really quickly. I really, again, I hope they have it at the library, but I really want to read The Good House by Tanana Reeve Dew. I've never read anything by Tanana Reeve Dew, and she is an author that I feel like I need to read from because, I don't know, I feel like her books get recommended absolutely everywhere. They all sound really interesting, but this one in particular has been haunting me because I swear to God, every time I watch a video when people are talking about horror recommendations, I feel like this book gets recommended. Like everyone recommends it. So, I need to read it. I need to read it. So I'm really hoping that I can get my hands on it at the library. Fingers are crossed. And then, of course, I have How to Sell a Haunted House. Because I'm reading this with my book club. This is the one that I am absolutely positive 100% I will be reading this month. Everything else is like, will I fit this in, basically. But I'm hoping for these two for sure because I own them both. But like, they all sound so good. So, I mean, and I'll be honest, I can't name, I'm trying to think, what haunted house book have I read? Besides like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, I don't think I've read. I've also read Hill House, The Haunting of Hill House. So those are like my two haunted house books that I've read to base anything on. I've seen haunted house movies. So let's explore, shall we? I'm excited to see what I think of all these books. So as I read them, I'll come back and I'll share my thoughts. And we can talk about it. So I don't know what I'm going to start with. I think I might start with The Switch House because it is so short. I feel like that's a good starting place. So I think I'm going to read The Switch House first and see what I think of it. And I'll let you guys know after I finish it what I think. So, does Sadie Hartman recommend good books? We're going to find out together. So far, she's did a really good job with the apocalyptic fiction. I loved all of that. So I have a feeling that I'll love these too. So I will let you guys know my thoughts when I read more things. So I read The Switch House by Tim Meyer. And I really don't know how to talk about it. Like, I loved it. It was really good. I gave it 5 stars, but it's such a short book, and I feel like it's hard to describe it to you without accidentally spoiling, and you really don't want to be spoiled. I don't think you want to know a whole lot going into this one. So I'm just going to give you the most basic of synopsises that I can. So this story is following a woman and her husband who have just done this like house swap TV show, like a reality show. And it's already happened. They've come home back to their house. They're getting ready to watch the show for the first time as it's airing on TV. And the woman they swap houses with is a little mysterious. And she starts to believe that something terrible has happened while the woman was in their home. Like she's brought some kind of demonic something to their house. You also need to know, as like a trigger warning situation, that the couple has lost their child. They're dealing with the aftermath of the loss of this child, and it's kind of putting a strain on their marriage. And they're trying to rebuild their marriage after this has happened. And I guess the house swap thing was supposed to be a part of fixing that. So basically, that's what sets up the story. It goes in a really weird direction that I didn't see coming. This is probably one of my favorite horror books I've read so far, in that it's just so different from what I thought it was going to be going in. I'm kind of struggling though with the idea that this is a haunted house book, because to me, it didn't feel like a haunted house book. Like, yes, there's a house involved, but a lot of the awful stuff that happens, I felt was almost more people doing bad things rather than like a supernatural element. But I don't know. Anyway, it was really good. Trigger warnings for things like body horror. It was very graphic. There's a lot of descriptions of some pretty like disturbing imagery. It was graphic. It's probably one of the most like gross books I've read so far too. Like it was really like I've read gross things before, but this one had some pretty graphic imagery in it. And so if that's something that bothers you, it didn't really bother me. I can usually handle the graphic imagery when I'm reading better than I can handle it when I'm viewing. Like I cannot watch Saw movies. To me, they're too gross. And those images like sear into my brain and I can't unsee them. But when I read it, I don't know, somehow I can like not see it as gross as it's meant to be. Like I'm pretty sure if I watched The Switch House as a movie, it would have been like too much for me. So take that as a little bit of a warning. So yeah, it does get kind of graphic. There is trigger warnings for child loss, child abuse, that sort of thing. So be aware of that. But the writing was so good. This is also kind of a descent into madness story, which I love that. I love descent into madness stories because it usually goes in directions I'm not expecting. So I love when a story can surprise me. And this book really did that. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. If you're interested in reading some indie horror, and reading some novellas, I would recommend this one. I think it's definitely worth picking up. So I'm on to my next book. I went to the library yesterday. They didn't have The Good House, which I was really bummed. Somebody must have like just checked it out before I got there. But it's fine. It's okay. Because I did get some things. So I think I'm going to read this next. I have Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This of the books that I have is one that intrigues me the most because it's so polarizing. I just really want to know what I think of it. I think it's about a woman who is going home to visit her mother. I think her father was a serial killer or something like that, and she hasn't been back home in a long time. And so she goes home to visit her mother and things happen. I don't know. I'm not good at describing books I haven't read, but I think I'm just really curious. I have no idea what I'm going to think. I can't even guess. I don't know if I'm going to love this or if I'm going to hate it, but I'm excited to find out. So this is what I'm going to be reading next, and I will let you know my thoughts when I finish it. But I just finished reading Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey, and I loved it. This 5 stars. I'm blown away. Like, the writing. This is the first time I've read Sarah Gailey. I did not know what to expect. And the writing is so good. Like, oh, I can't. I don't even know how to explain how good it, like, it's the way she describes the house is so interesting and so unique. I think I haven't read that many haunted house books, to be fair, but I don't know that I've read any that describe the house the way she describes the house in this book. Like, and I don't know how to talk about it because a lot of my thoughts have to do with like the end of the book and where the story went. And I don't want to spoil, like, this is really a book you don't want to know anything about. Like, the very vaguest of vague synopsis I can give you is our main character Vera hasn't been home for a long time. Her mother is dying and has called her to come home and like take care of her in her last days, help to pack up the house, that sort of thing. So she's going home to this house. And I don't really want to tell you more because like the reveals in this book were so good, and I never knew. I had 0 predictions. I just kind of let this happen, and I'm so glad I did that and didn't sit there and try to like think and figure it out, because I would never have come to the conclusions where this book was going at all. So I'm glad that I went in very blind and that I just kind of let it take me for a ride. And like, I just like could not put this down. I was so immersed in the story, just desperate to know what was going to happen. It's beautiful writing, very lyrical. The story touches on, like, I'm trying to think how to share like trigger warnings and stuff. Like, is it gory? Not really. The body horror is pretty mild overall. There's a lot of like intensity, There's a lot of just like, things are happening, and it gets like weirder and creepier, and it's a lot of very tense moments. I feel like this is the kind of book that if they made this into a movie, there would be a lot of jump scares because there's just a lot of moments of just like the tension needs to break. I just thought this was stellar. This is perfection. This is what I want from a horror book. There's flashbacks, there's a coming of age element to it, which I absolutely love. That's like one of my favorite things, is coming of age stories and coming of age horror specifically. So that element was just, loved it so much. And I don't really want to tell you anything else. Like, I don't know how to talk about it without being full of spoilers. And I'm so don't want to spoil this book for anybody. So I encourage you, if you're looking for a good haunted house book, to go get yourself a copy, read Just Like Home. I'm dying to know what you think, because like I understand why someone might not like where the book goes, but for me it worked so well. It was great and I loved it. So 5 stars, loved it so much. Like, I don't know how I would ever top this, but I think my next book is going to be The Grip of It by Jack Gems, because this is another one I've heard so many people rave about, and like, I'm dying to know what this is. I don't know anything about it. Like, I'm going into this, again, very blind. I did read Sadie Hartman's blurb, so I've read about it, but also, like, she doesn't give anything away, so I don't really know much. So I'm going into this pretty blind, but I'm really excited about it. But I am, I think, gonna read some other things before I pick this up, because like I have a lot of things that I wanted to get to this month. So I think I'm gonna take a little haunted house break. Not that you'll notice, because like the very next portion of this video is gonna be me talking about this, but like I am gonna come back to it in a few days after I read some other things, because like the new Slayers Buffyverse book just dropped, and I wanted to immediately read it, but I couldn't because I have too many books going. So I have to finish up some of the things that I'm reading, because I'm doing that thing again where I have like 7 books going. So I've got to finish stuff so that I can like get into other things. So that is my plan. Also, how serendipitous, my Nightworms for September came today. And I already knew the book that was coming, because I wanted to, I have to be aware now, because I used to pre-order a lot of things and then I would get the book in my Nightworms and it's like, so to avoid that, I pay attention to the spoilers. So I knew this was coming, but like, what perfect timing. I now have A Haunting on the Hill. This is by Elizabeth Hand, and this is like the first like official Hill House sequel. So like if you are a fan of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, this book is set in Hill House. I don't think it's actually a sequel. I think it's just set in the Hill House of A Haunting of Hill House. So it's like a continuation perhaps of that, and not so much a sequel, but like I have it and it's beautiful, and like I really want to read this too. But I already have too many things to read this month, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But I'm so tempted, even though technically that's not a book that she recommended in her, but she recommended it obviously because she sent it to me, so like it counts, right? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I have time. But anyway, moving on. I am gonna go and read more things, and when I come back I will tell you my thoughts on The Grip of It by Jack Gems. Okay, it's dark in here. I'm doing the best I can with this gloomy day. But I just finished reading The Grip of It by Jack Gems. I don't even know how to articulate my thoughts. So, okay. This is a really interesting haunted house story in that nothing is what it seems to be. It's all told in a very kind of ambiguous way. So you're going back and forth, like almost every other chapter. You're going between the wife and the husband and their perspectives. So you're jumping back and forth through the whole book, which gives you, like, I think a better picture of what's happening while also not. So like, the whole book, you're never really sure what's going on, which this book is not for everybody. I feel like if you're a person who doesn't like ambiguity in your stories, who wants to know details, you're not going to enjoy this, because there are no, like, there's never a moment where you're certain what's happening, which I think adds a lot to the weirdness. I mean, haunted house books tend to rely on weird because it's a weird, like, ghosts are weird. The idea of your home being haunted is so weird. So a haunted house book has to rely on that kind of, like, atmosphere of just strangeness. And this book has a ton of that. So if you're the kind of person that reads for atmosphere, this book is for you. If you're the kind of person who loves a book where you're never really certain, this is for you. If you like dual perspectives, if you like stories that are like madness, like your characters are being slowly driven insane, and this book can definitely work for some readers. But I can also see why people would not like this. I'm falling somewhere in the middle. Like, I really liked the atmosphere. I really didn't mind the ambiguity. I didn't like how this book ends, though. I felt kind of like the end of the book was a cop-out. It just didn't seem like it was leading that way, and it just, I don't know. If you've read this, I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending, because to me, it just, like, didn't work. I would have loved a different ending, but I loved everything up to that point. So I gave this 4 stars. Very creepy, very weird, lots of atmosphere. Can definitely see why Sadie Hartman recommended it, but it wasn't my favorite thing that I've read so far. So, like, of the 3 books that I've read to this point, this is probably my least favorite, but I mean, I still gave it 4 stars. I still, like, devoured this book. I read it so quickly. And if you're a person who likes short chapters, this book, the chapters are almost all like 2 to 3 pages long. I'm trying to show you an example, and I'm not doing well. Like, can you see how short the chapters are? Some of them are only like 1 page long. So, like, this book reads really fast. So it's super fast paced. That's always a benefit. I love a book that reads quickly. It just makes me feel proud of myself when I can read a book fast. And I read this almost in a day. I read most of it yesterday, and I finished it today because I just didn't quite have time to wrap it up. But I enjoyed this. I thought it was a good entry into the haunted house genre. I liked it. So moving on now. I don't know that I'm going to have time to read more than 1 more book. We're at the end of the month. There's a chance that I finish this and I decide I'm going to go ahead and do 1 more, but probably this will be my last read, and that, of course, is going to be Grady Hendrix's newest book, How to Sell a Haunted House. This is my book club book for October, so I've been, like, anticipating this for ages. It came out at, like, the beginning of the year, and I've just been waiting. It's finally going to happen. I'm going to be starting this very soon. All I really know going into this is we're following 2 siblings who have to sell their parents' house after they've died, and the house doesn't want to be sold. I know there's some kind of doll puppet situation happening in here too, which has me super intrigued. It's Grady Hendrix, so I'm expecting it to be somewhere in the middle of funny and creepy. So very, very much looking forward to it, though. He's one of my favorite writers. I am very into the creepy, funny vibes, so looking forward to that. So I just finished reading Grady Hendrix, How to Sell a Haunted House, and this might be my favorite haunted house book that I read in this video. I'm struggling sometimes with the definition of haunted house because I'm not sure that this quite fits, but also neither did The Switch House. But both were very good haunted house books. So here we are. This is a story about Louise, who gets a phone call from her estranged brother that her parents have just died. She was just visiting them. She just saw them. And so she doesn't believe him at first. And she has to go home and deal with that. And they have a challenging relationship. Like, I love stories about families and family drama. I'm not a big fan of like bad marriage books, but give me a dysfunctional family and I am invested. Like, I found this to be riveting. The dynamics between Louise and Mark were really, really interesting. Like, I wouldn't say that I hate my brother, but we did not get along at all when we were kids. Like, we get along now, we can talk and stuff, but like, if thrown into a situation like this, I feel like it would be very similar dynamics. So like, I felt that. The whole thing with the mother and the dolls and the puppets and things. Oh my God, you guys. My mother collects dolls, and I just know someday I'm going to have to deal with that. Like, I'm going to have to be there to clean that up. And it just, this was so scary for that reason. Like, thinking about like, what if the doll was possessed? What if it was alive? Like, I was never like a big fan of child's play and that sort of thing, but like, I can feel the creepy factor. Like, dolls can be so creepy. So like, the idea behind this worked for me. Like, that was very creepy. Loved all. I don't want to tell you guys too much because I feel like this is a story you need to know as little as possible. So I'm sorry, I sound terrible. I'm sick. I'm doing my best. So I'm not going to give you guys any details, but like, this was so much fun, but also so incredibly sad. Like, this is in its essence, this is a story about a woman dealing with the grief of losing her parents suddenly and like having to come to terms with the fact that they're gone. And that is something that really makes me upset and unsettled. Knowing that like that's something on my horizon, and it fills me with dread. Like, just thinking about it makes me so upset. Like, I don't even know how to handle that kind of thing. So like, reading about it makes me feel very unmoored and unsettled. So like, the whole thing worked incredibly well for me. Like, Grady Hendrix is just brilliant. He is one of my favorite writers because he is so good at telling a story that is both upsetting and unsettling while also being full of this emotional drama and tension. And he writes these scenes that can be just like really creepy and beautiful at the same time. So I really enjoyed that. I am not doing well. I am feeling very under the weather, so I don't want to do a whole big long spiel about all the things I read, but I read 4 books about haunted houses. I feel now like I have better experience with this subgenre in horror. I have now read many haunted house books. And do I think Sadie Hartman gives good recommendations? I do. I thoroughly enjoyed all 4 of the books that I read in this video that were recommended by Sadie Hartman. I think that she is very good at identifying books that have appeal for a wide audience, as well as books that have an appeal for a very specific audience. Like, just like Home, I don't know, works for everybody, but it certainly worked for me. Do I think this would have mass appeal? I hope so, but I also can understand why maybe it's just a me book, but I hope that maybe I will inspire you to choose to pick up a new horror book based on what I've read in this video. If I had to pick a favorite, I think it's a tie between Just Like Home and How to Sell a Haunted House. I think both of those books are incredibly different, but they both worked really well for me. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, I hope that you will hit the subscribe button down below so you can stay tuned for more of my videos in the future. Be sure to hit the like button, that's always helpful, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading, bye!